Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the vBrownbag. This week we've got a special guest with us. He's also one of our hosts, and he's going to be talking about one of his projects that he's worked on, vDocumentation. But before we begin, we're going to take a couple of look at some quick notes here. You can find us on Twitter at all of the accounts listed there. Contact us through the hashtag vBrownbag as well. You can check out the schedule of all of the other episodes that we do throughout the week in the various time zones and various locations for around the world. Another little bit of housekeeping as well. Look, we've got coming up pretty quick here. We've got the end of year giveaway. So look for the sign up form for that, and then the last episode of the year we'll actually do the drawings for the prizes. And this year we've got 2 Intel Nooks. We've got some awesome sponsors lined up that have given us 2 Intel Nooks to raffle off or give away. We've got a drone and a bunch of other good stuff. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be coming up pretty quick here. And without further ado, Ariel, I will make you presenter and hand the mic off to you.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Let's try that. You should be seeing a black screen with white letters only.
That's exactly what I see.
Awesome. So we had an opening today, and at Explore VM was really, really nice in accepting to host me. This is a presentation that I've given at certain VMUGs, and it involves an open source project that Ariel Sanchez and myself started. So it's an update, and you have the information right there in the YouTube video. Please reach out if you have any questions. That is my Twitter handle. Let's get started. So you will be able to find this presentation in my blog, or just tweet at me and I can send you the presentation. And this is normally something I would tell people at the VMUG, but why not? You can go ahead and take a selfie or a picture right from the comfort of your own home and tweet it out. I really like interacting with people in Twitter. That I really think that the moment that people join Twitter and get into the V community, they really find out how awesome it can be. So I want to see some tweets later on. Hashtag vBrownbag, hashtag vDocumentation. All right, so here's our agenda for today. We're going to learn about vDocumentation. We're going to see the highlights of the VMworld 2017 presentation, which was when we actually roll this out. What has happened since? We're going to do some live demos with my actual home lab equipment. So this should be a little more fun than typical, because normally I would have to do it with a nested host that really didn't give us a lot of hardware details. So we might get some more today. And some QA and fun, of course. This was the presentation in VMworld 2017. That was the first and only time that I presented at VMworld, and it was pretty cool. But you know, the topic was achieve maximum vSphere stability with Power CLI assisted documentation, and from builder to the administration. Let me put a phone in mute over here. Now, Edgar and I are not related, even if we have the same last name. And you can find Edgar is really the brains of the operation. He's the one that did most, I would say 99% of the coding. The only thing that happened was I was the one that told Edgar, hey, I'm doing this manually. Can we get, if you want to learn about VMware, want to learn about Power CLI, if you can do this programmatically, it will be really, really sweet. And he ended up doing it. So, you know, he's an awesome guy. He works for Convergys. Anybody that would snatch him up, he's probably the best guy I know in the world. So let's get into it. So admins who are very satisfied with their vSphere documentation are a very low percentage out there. And worse, most new hires get this reaction when somebody asks where the documentation is. You know, they just look at them and they start laughing. So that's not a great thing, right? So one thing that we all of us as VMware admin have to understand is that stability is the goal of VMware administration. If VMware for some reason was failing all the time, you would not put that extra layer between the OS and the hardware. So we have to make sure that VMware, we get all the benefits from VMware, but we also get none of the possible downtimes that could come from operator mistakes. However, even with people that are just doing VMware administration, you find that there's significant firefighting. There's a lack of confidence when doing, quote, big changes, because people are not confident. They don't have consistent, repeatable process. They don't have documentation of how they do things. There's still avoidable downtime. And the number one thing that I don't like to see is information hoarding, where only one people in the whole organization knows about some setup and nobody else knows it. So if there's an outage, we have to wait for that guy to join the call. And that's probably the worst thing that can happen to a team, because it leads to overworked admins. When you have this person who is the best at something, well, they get assigned more projects. And if they don't have the time to write it down and teach others, they just end up burning out. So we have to make stability a primary focus. It just doesn't happen by accident. There's the hero numbers myth. And I don't know if anybody here can, in the chat and of the attendees, and thank you for being here today, if you can put what's the most uptime in days that you have had in your hosts. And I don't know if we can get somebody to put it in as a question or something. Let's take a look. But I've had people, at several VMUGs tell me, oh, I had, 600 days. Oh, I had 1,000 days. Oh, I had a 4.0 host or a 3.5 host that had 2,000. That's really bad. You're really telling me that nobody thought of patching this host, right? So we have to get away from celebrating those things, and we actually have to think about anybody that has more than 100, for example. This is probably showing a symptom. It's probably showing something that is wrong with the organization and with the administration teams. I always love, showing this cartoon over here, and I'll tell you why. Because we have an opportunity for leadership. The most important influencers in the greater system administration teams are the ones that go to VMUGs, are the ones that come to vBrownbag to learn things. So when you see something like this, when we took the hostages, secured the building, cut the communication lines, like you said, but then this guy climbed up the ventilation ducts and walked across broken glass, killing anyone we sent to stop him, and he rescued the hostages? No, he ignored them. He just reconnected the cables we cut, muttering something about uptime. Oh my God, we're dealing with a sysadmin, XKCD, always great for us. But we really have to dedicate time and resources to achieving stability. Okay, so the first thing you do is you invest in good, 96 days. Well, that 96 days is not too bad. Thank you for replying there, Eric. We have to invest in good design and enterprise components, right? If we want to have good uptime, we just have to have servers that are part of the HCL, that are certified to run the versions that we're expecting to run. We want to make sure that whoever designed this actually knows what they're talking about. Sometimes, the vendors play a lot in how things are designed, but if you have people internally that are getting their certifications, that are reading the BVD or the best practices, and hopefully that they even took in the VCAP course, or maybe even are looking to get or have attained VCDX, that will ultimately affect the amount of uptime and stability in your environments, because all that good design is avoiding downtime. When you have good design, you have an answer and you eliminate single points of failure. You make sure they have an answer for failure scenarios. So it's good to invest the time in those things. But once that is deployed, once that's sent out to the field, people and processes are more important. And the number one enemy of stability, in my opinion, is lack of bandwidth. When you don't have enough time to do the things that you have to do, even the menial or the things that are not as visible, then you will have increased human mistakes, and really the team doesn't improve over time. If you're just in firefighting mode all the time, the team doesn't improve. Engineers need time. You need time to learn, you need time to think about things, and you need time to discuss with each other and maybe other people in the free community at a VMUG, etc. And we also need time to document what we have done and to do that knowledge transfer. When we have that time and when engineers fight for that time, morale goes up and employees stay put because they're learning, they like what they're doing, they're proud of their work. If you're just firefighting all the time and nobody's sharing information, people are going to be bouncing the job. And every time somebody leaves a job, it's a really big hit to the team and to the company. So as engineers, as long as we're well taken care of, well compensated, and appreciated, we like wins. And we like to really feel that we're doing a quality job. So another time when stability is at risk is when you're making changes. So you really have to plan properly. We're talking about changes in the environment. We're just making a change, and that involves risk. Changes in the staff. Maybe this is the first time that the junior is going to own the whole change. The software that we're doing changes in. Sometimes we get bugs. Sometimes we get unintended consequences. Sometimes we didn't really realize that maybe this version of software changed things. This is a famous one when 5.5 disabled SSL. A lot of people broke, or maybe people weren't as aware that the vCenter has to be patched before the hosts, and the host would not reconnect. So you have to really understand when you have to read the release notes, and especially if you haven't patched in a good while, you have to understand, whoa, if I'm going from 6.0 GA to 6.0 update 3C or wherever we are, that's a lot of changes. So let me take a look and read those release notes. 30 minutes of your time, and you will be able to identify problems before they happen, right? Changes in the architecture. Think about what happens if someone says, hey, we're upgrading all domain controllers. And the first question that the VMware admin is going to ask is, are we keeping the same IPs, or is this separate servers? Because we know that DNS is very important in our environment, and we know that DNS is hard-coded in every host and in the vCenter. So we need to understand what the dependencies to our environments are. All of this comes back to engineer bandwidth. Apart from the things that we just talked about, we also need to be prepared for outages in order for us to guarantee uptime. We need to have fast access to precise and relevant information, meaning, and what I typically see is there's a share or there's a SharePoint where all the documents are there and nobody's saving somewhere else. All the team has agreed that the information that you need is at X place. And if you have several levels, if, for example, you're the architect and you're level 3, you want to make sure that the level 1 actually has access to the information they need. Because it really doesn't help if the level 1 and level 2 can't access that SharePoint, right? So a lot of this cross-training involves making sure that the people who you're relying on have all they need to actually resolve. Understanding the escalation levels is also very important. When you have an outage, apologize there, you want to understand at what point do we need to call, if there's someone more experienced, the manager, the director. We have to understand what our own service level to the rest of the company is. And also understanding how support contracts work. I used to be in a company where, for one particular vendor, if you were not on the list, you couldn't call in a ticket. And I remember calling my boss after I got denied, and he said, well, next time you just call in and say you're John. There's workarounds, right? But you have to understand those kind of things. Because John might be on vacation, and he may be the only one that has the support contract. So all of these things, we need to have a discussion as a team so that when an outage happens, it gets resolved as soon as possible. And finally, it's really one thing that I've noted at VMUG when I ask how many have business continuity and real disaster recovery plans. I'm talking about a plane fell onto your main data center. How fast are you going to get back? So real disasters, not just we lost internet for a little while. And typically, there's not a great response. I find that as companies have more money, they have better BCDR. But all of that is also very important to have it documented. If you use applications like SRM or Certo, something that helps you with your site recovery, you want to understand how to initiate it. You want to understand how it's tested. You want to especially understand what's covered, because at some point somebody made a business decision to cover 100% of the environment, 50% of the environment, or 10% of the environment. It can be very important to understand why decisions were made, and especially in a disaster, when somebody says, "Why wasn't my server there?" Well, that's because, and here's the documentation, you said not to put it there because it would make it more expensive or not. Or you can basically say, these are the ones that have to be brought up first, because there's no point bringing up the Exchange if AD is not running. All of these things are very important to have documented. Have you heard me talk about building teams, building good teams? And that, for me, is some of the most important things that you can have for stability in environments. When you're hiring and when you're leading, you're looking for people that are good at communicating, people that are self-learners, but also that like to share what they learned. And maturity and good manners matter a lot. You can have what's called, in quotes, like a rock star, but if he's just somebody that nobody wants to work with, you made a bad decision. This is not the team you want. You want a team that gets together and that is able to put out the work, quality work, with no fuss. And you, as a leader, you want to emphasize that the team values are standardization, clear processes, documentation is important. You want to make sure that work is peer-reviewed, load sharing, responsible time off. And when I'm talking about responsible time off is when somebody goes on vacation, he is not the single point for anything. He has handed off anything he was doing, and he can really go on vacation because we're covered. We win as a team, not as individuals, right? So another thing that we have to understand is our leaders have to empower us. We have to provide direction. We have to nurture. But we don't want to have leaders that are, and it happens a lot, but I also see engineers/managers. They're really technical too, but they're also the manager position. So they're really under a lot of stress all the time. Hopefully you can get to the point where you're really managing the service, where you're managing the team, and you don't have to be also the technical SME. All right, so let's talk a little about the importance of documentation. Another XKCD comic. I lost the server password. Can you send it to me? Hey, how do I know it's really you? Oh, good question. I bet we can construct a cool proof of identity protocol. I'll start by picking two. Oh, God, it's you. Here's the password. So it's always funny because these things really do happen. I've worked in knock centers where you have to really understand, is that really my boss who's calling me, asking for us to really reboot that router? Or is it, am I being DOS'd here? Am I being hacked by someone? So we really have to understand a lot of the processes internally. But I'm very off topic. Let's go back to company documentation. One thing that you would be amazed at how few companies can produce this when I asked is just for an org chart. Can you show me how the IT org chart works? Can you tell me how many company locations, especially global companies, when they tell me, oh, I have 50 sites around the world? Great. Do you have a list of those locations that includes the addresses? Who's your IT contact over there? Most of the time, they don't say that they have. They say they know where to get the information, but they don't have it, and that's pretty bad because if you need to send servers out to the world, that's a lot of emails that have to go back and forth to be able to coordinate this kind of thing. So it's important that as an IT org, we have an up-to-date repository of information. Infrastructure services is another very important one for us as VMware administrators. We want to see what's the subnets, what's the network information. Do I have the right gateway? Do I have the right subnets? Do I know if these are firewall segments? AD, DNS, NTP are the most basic things that we need when we're setting up our hosts, and understanding the syslog architecture as well. I've seen companies that have NTP regionally, so depending on where you build your host, NTP is different. lower latency. I've seen companies that do all of the syslog in one central location. We're not here to talk about that design right now, but you have to have a good idea of how these things are set up because they're critical to us. And one thing that, especially when you come into a new company, you want to understand as a new employee how to ask for help. How do you submit changes? Again, the vendor relationships and name contacts, that's all different. It's also important, but it's, I've seen companies that several teams all have a relationship with a vendor, and it's a separate relationship. They may even be talking to different salespeople, and they could be getting a better deal if they consolidate it. So there's whole lots of IT information that should be stored centrally, and it doesn't matter how big or small you are. But let's go ahead and drill down on vSphere documentation. So we talked a lot about, and the better you get, and the more you understand about design and the technical nuances, the more you get to document about. But let's say that you started with a design, so you want to have that design somewhere. You want to understand why was this built this way? Why did we choose iSCSI, or why did we choose NFS, or why did we choose this or that? If you have hardening instructions, VMware puts out a big hardening guide, but everybody normally grabs a little bit of this and that. Where is that customized document? When you create, or if you have internal, when you have internal reviews, like for example, somebody uses Nessus or something else to scan hosts, and maybe they found vulnerabilities, well, this document has to be updated, and we have to keep a log of every change on that document if we ever want to get audited on those settings. Patching is, it sounds easy just because VUM is kind of easy to use, but when a patch was released, when a host was patched, and the log about it is something that certain auditors require for you to pass some certifications. So other things, security standards, all of these things, they grow and change with time. And any project tracking that you have, all of these are just a sample of what could count as vSphere documentation, things that the VMware administration team is in charge of and is expected to be able to produce. And I'm pretty sure you're already thinking of other things that could be created. Hello, Valdecir. All right. And here's a conversation I love having. Doesn't cloud change this? For me, in my opinion, as long as you own uptime, as long as somebody in the company says, Ariel is the guy that when this fails, this cannot fail because Ariel owns this, then your job includes documentation. Because Ariel wants to take vacations. Because Ariel will want at some point to move to something else, and he has to give this job to somebody else that is willing to take it. So what to document may change as some people go to more cloud-native infrastructures, but somebody will still own documenting how things work. So there is no cloud, it's just someone else's computer. Very famous sticker. Okay, now let's get into the good stuff. I always, whenever I give this presentation, I feel like I'm just, behind the pulpit and telling people, document. But honestly, what we want to get at is how can we make documentation easier? Just because, we know we have to create it, but we probably want to create it in the easiest way. Sorry. So yes, almost everything about documentation can be scripted. You can create some reports that are not even available in vCenter thanks to things like PowerCLI. One last thing in this slide is that if you want to learn a new language, if you want to learn how to talk, how to use an SDK, how to talk to an API, one of the safest things you can do is start using that language to create documentation. Think about it. You normally need only read-only access, and you cannot cause an outage from just getting information. So if you want to get better at Ansible, if you want to get better at other things that maybe you use the RESTful API or the Python SDK, creating documentation is an excellent way to do that. So there are several free projects out there that create, that basically do some of the same things that we're going to see today. vCheck has been around for years. I think Alan Renouf was the one that started. He open sourced it. I used to use it especially to see who created a snapshot, how long had that snapshot been there, and I loved it because I could just forward that email to that person and tell them, hey, I see this snapshot that's taking 3 days, and we have a policy that snapshots can only take 1 day. What's going on? So it's meant to be sent as a daily report. It's meant to be sent daily to your inbox. But even if you run it just once in a while, it's a great project, and it gets updated all the time. We have taken a lot from the vCheck code into vDocumentation. RVTools is a very complete .NET application. Rob DeVage, I don't know if I butchered his name, also been around for a long, long time. The only thing that might not be great is that it might be more difficult to run it in Linux or Mac. But I think that .NET is now, PowerShell is being capable of running almost anywhere now. So maybe he will release a compatible version. Otherwise, you might need Windows. A lot of people have told me that vDocumentation really looks like RVTools. So we didn't really use RVTools a lot. Probably we had used it, we wouldn't have created vDocumentation. But I've been told by a lot of people that they love it and they find it very complete. There's a couple other projects, the vCenter documentation script by Jack Rutsky. I think you can find it if you just if you search for that. And very new, and this came out and last VMworld, is called the as-built report. That is the session number and the title, if you want to take a look at it. The one thing that I love about the as-built report, first, it actually creates a document. Like, you can actually print this and give it to your boss, whereas vDocumentation is more about getting the data into Excel. And second, it's meant to be modular. So if you want to document Veeam, or you want to document Pure, or some other vendor who has provided, a PowerShell SDK, you can do this with, you can plug that into the as-built report, so you can document more than just VMware. So that's a pretty cool thing, and I encourage everybody to check each one of these projects. All right, so let's talk about PowerCLI and the vCommunity. I hinted at this when we said that we used a lot of code from other people. Not because of the famous Cathedral and Bazaar quote that's in the screen, but because that's how basically the vCommunity is. So let's talk about a little bit about that. Let's talk about PowerCLI. It's based on PowerShell. It's very easy to install and pick up. PowerCLI Core is available for Mac and Linux. It keeps getting improved and expanded. You have vSAN commandlets, SRN commandlets, Horizon, PowerNSX. Great adoption by the vCommunity. In my mind, it is still the Cadillac of how to talk to vCenter. Like, if you can't do it with PowerCLI, you might be able to do it with maybe the Python and the old API, but most of the time, this is really what everything else is judged against. Now, vCommunity, all of the people that are out there, they make PowerCLI very easy. What I call the greats: Alan, Luke Deckens, William Lamb, Ryan Graff, Kyle Ruddy, Chris Wall, many, many more, who have put a lot of their code out there. I still remember David Stamen. I used one of his PowerCLI codes when I was working, 3 years ago. Lots and lots of people are willing to share what they have done, what they have found that nobody else had done, in a blog post, or put it in the VMware communities in the PowerCLI blog. Or the PowerCLI forum. So that's what makes the vCommunity great. There's also the VMware Code initiative, which has a Slack, and that's like, you can get real-time feedback from people when you're having any problems, trying to get something working. They might just tell you, you're doing this wrong, or they might point you to the right place, but it's very interactive. And it's that spirit of sharing and building from each other where hoarding information really gets us nowhere. When we share, we actually, there's a saying that when we teach to learn, because we may get feedback and realize that we didn't understand something 100% or that it could be improved. So that's what the community is all about. So the vDocumentation scripts are PowerCLI commands to create vSphere documentation. And when we presented this in VMworld, we had a host inventory script that gave you hardware and configuration details, I/O devices, anything that basically has I/O, such as NICs or HVAs, networking, and storage. It was, from the get-go, it was meant to be a community project. You can find, you can search vDocumentation in Google, and we'll bring you to our GitHub page. We use the hashtag vDocumentation on Twitter. It's part of a larger effort. I mean, at some point, I would really like to provide everything I've talked about as free documentation templates, but I haven't had the time to really do that. But it's meant to be a vCommunity resource to create vSphere environment documentation easily. It's supposed to be, so our design goals, Edgar's and I's, it was supposed to be beginner friendly. We were going to focus, and we focus on ease of use, simple installation, simple defaults. We chose to output to Excel. We can also do CSV, but we chose to output to Excel so that we could really sort and filter the data that we got back. And that's a lot of how I used to work manually. I would create something for my boss, and he would grab that, and he would filter out what he needed, etc., etc. So that's basically what we created. You know, it's meant to also be something that other people take advantage of and are able to give feedback to us. And that is something that we have actually been able to achieve. I'll talk a little bit more in a little bit. All right, so I'm going to bring us over to the GitHub page for vDocumentation. Pretty sure you can see it, right?
Yep, we can see it. And I'm just going to take a real quick pause here. I see we've had a few people join us since the start of the broadcast. Any questions can be dropped in the questions panel, the chat box, or hit us up on Twitter, hashtag vBrownbag.
Nice, thank you. All right, so this, when you search up vDocumentation on Google, it'll basically bring you here. And when you look at the README, it says, you know, this is a community-created set of PowerCLI scripts. You can see the recording to the original session. If you're seeing this recording, it's very, very similar. You don't need to see it again. But the slides are here as the mind map. I provide some quick instruction. If you already installed it, here's how you upgrade it. But if you haven't, then here's the selection instructions. Now, basically what I'm showing here is the first time usage on a brand new machine with PowerShell 5.x or newer and an open internet connection. PowerShell 5.x typically means that you're running maybe Windows 10. If you're running Windows 7 or 8, you probably had to upgrade .NET and some other things to be able to get to PowerShell 5. I think we're up to PowerShell 6 now. But anyways, if this is the first time, Windows 10 new machine, you want to set the execution policy. I believe that there was some other command that you have to put now that they changed some behavior. I think that they include, and I don't have it right now, but you know what? Let's go ahead and bring up a PowerShell over here and just keep it around, right? So first of all, I think I may have it installed here. So let's take a look. If I have it installed, we want to uninstall it. Yes, I have an older version here. So let's go ahead and uninstall that. And maybe make this so that we can see both things at the same time. Right. So we're going to be doing a lot of this just as if I was teaching you and we were just on my desk at work, right? So I expect some things to fail here and there, but I'll try to make it the best I can. And we also have, I'm going to also uninstall VMware PowerCLI and import Excel. So basically in the installation instructions, we have 3 modules to install. And one thing you have to understand, if you've been using Power CLI for a while, is that we used to release, or VMware used to release Power CLI as an installable MSI that you download off the VMware site, but that's not the case anymore. Now what we tell people is go ahead and install it from the Windows PowerShell gallery directly. So actually I can probably just go like this, and instead of vDocumentation, see what version of Power CLI I'm running. I had 10.1, so let's go ahead and install that. And then we'll do the same for import Excel so that we can actually do it without having anything installed, right? So I see a question that, can this run in Mac OS? If you run the, if you install Power CLI on Mac OS, you should be able to run it as well. Now, I haven't tried it. I don't have a Mac, so you will have to let me know how it goes. But if you can, yeah, I also have import Excel, so let me go ahead and remove that. Okay. So if you have Mac today, you want to find out exactly what the command is to install PowerShell. But once you have PowerShell running, you should be able to just do these same commands: install module, Power CLI, install module, import Excel, install module, vDocumentation. Now notice I'm not running as an administrator here. If you do run as administrator, you don't need the scope current user. Okay. So at this moment, if I do a show me vDocumentation, nothing shows up. If I do a show me Power CLI, nothing shows up. If I do import Excel, nothing shows up. So I'm going to go ahead and install Power CLI first. And this will take a while, but if you've seen this before, you get a little transmission over the internet as it goes out to Microsoft servers and grabs it from there. And you can literally grab this and find it in the PowerShell gallery. So you can see that we've taken the time, or Edgar has taken the time, to make sure the vDocumentation has been accepted in the PowerShell gallery. I wonder why it says current version 2.4. Maybe I can click on this and it takes me to another one. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so you see here on the right, PowerShell itself is downloaded VMware.PowerCLI. Again, you do need an internet connection for this. If not, I do provide some links in the README at the end, how you can, basically what Kyle Ruddy said, hey, if you don't have internet, here's the way that you install it. But I just want you to see how easy it is. And if you want to follow along as you are waiting on this to complete at home, especially Valdez here that was asking about Mac OS, you know, Google around, see if you can do this, and let us know at the end if you were able to get it running as well. And normally when I do this at a VMUG, I'm doing it from a hotspot on my phone, so this is actually quicker.
Well, excuse me. While we're waiting on this as well, we've had a couple of tweets come in regards to your question about days running on your hosts. Most around 90, two hosts at 270. And we've got another one that says, it could be 2,000 days, but I've got to check.
Whoa. Let's see. Tweet deck. Yeah, I wonder if we start like a little thread to somebody send some screenshots, if we get someone with more than 1,000 days. Let's see. This might be vBrownbag tweet deck. I love it. A poll.
We've got Graham asking if he should screenshot his live 5.5 servers uptime. I say yes.
Yes. Yes, we want to know. All right, this seems to be finishing. And we'll compare, like I was running 10.1, it will probably be newer than that because I haven't updated this in a while. Graham Mitchell says there's also Carl Webster's one. Let's go take a look at that one. Center documentation script. Oh, I think I have seen this one. Let's see. I think this is one that creates a Word document. Yeah. Yeah, I did see this one a while ago. I haven't seen it since. But yeah, of course we want to highlight somebody else. Text HTML, so Word is not required. Nice. So it will create a Word document, but it does not require Word to be installed. This is excellent. I can't remember what was his name. Let me find out. It was Tony from South FLV Mug. Yeah, vDiagram. So vDiagram creates Visio diagrams off of, and you only need, like, if you download a zip, it only needs like these two files, the PS1 and the VSS. And he actually, I don't know if he has like an example. You do need Visio installed, but it will create Visio diagrams. That's pretty cool. All right, so going back to this one, let's take a look at what PowerCLI version there. Oh, so we're here running PowerCLI 11 now. And we're just going to go in and ahead and install. That was the big one. We're going to go ahead with import Excel. Now, import Excel, the only reason that we install this module is because it allows us to create Excel files without having Excel installed. Otherwise, we can only output to CSV. But this should be a quick one. And then finally, vDocumentation. And while we look at this, I'm going to show you a little about the environment that I have. So I have some 6th-gen nukes. Actually, this one should be here. Probably don't have it set up yet. And I have a shuttle. I may be able to add some other hosts that I have. I'm pretty sure they're running. That one finished. So all of them are named after whoever sold them to me, except the shuttle. That was Mike Martino. And we have some machines here. But basically, we have some nukes. Let me see if I can add. What were those called? I'm pretty sure they were. Yeah, Tim Smith. Tim Smith, code 1. Let's see. Root VMware one bang. That's how I never forget what my, yeah, so these are super microserver. Oops, I want to show my license. And let's go ahead and add the other one of these. Maybe bring this a little bit down so my license will show even less.
So Graham says his hosts are up between 327 and 220 days.
Come on, man.
And Tim says Carl scripts require Word installed if you want Word output, not required for HTML or text output.
Cool. Yeah. So, did this finish? It did finish. I had clicked on it. Okay, so finally, vDocumentation. And this should be the end, the last of this prep work, but you're basically seeing how you can install the scripts. Okay, so once you actually have it installed, originally when we presented this in VMware 2017, it was only 4, but now we have 8. So we have the original 4, but we also, Edgar works in a PCI environment, so he's very aware of security and audits. He created one called Get ESX patching, and that will basically give you all of the patch time and even what KBs each patch is related to. We actually had, and I have it in the changelog, I'll show it in a little bit, but Graham, I think it was Virtual G. Let me find it real quick. Virtual G UK. So Graham Barker, and he doesn't have his picture right there, but he's a really nice guy. He actually, let's see if we can find a picture from him. Maybe a selfie. Close, but not cigar. He doesn't like taking selfies, I guess. But I'm pretty sure I've seen it in pictures. And he was very, very nice, and he basically reached out and said, "Hey, I really like what you guys are doing. Guess what? I can do this. I could do this for vSphere. I have some code. Can I add it to your project?" So he donated code for Get vSphere info, and he even gave us some improvements later on. So pretty cool.
We got a question real quick.
Sure.
So Charles wants to know, how does it handle hosts that are powered down? Does it require everything to be powered on in order to query, or does it just query vCenter?
So that's a good question, right? And I think I just want to say, if it's disconnected, let me think, because it does a Power CLI query. What happens? I think it would fail. I honestly think it would, because what the vCenter is going to do is he's going to try to get the information in real time. So if I were to power down something here, and we can do it, we can find out. Let's say I power down AJ Kuftik. No, I want to power down AJ Kuftik. Let's do Scrum 1. And I just don't want to power it down because it's the top one in the stack. I have to move everything else. So let me just go ahead and power this bad boy. Oh, it's smart enough to detect the space. Okay. So we're going to find out if when we run the commands, if something fails, right? I think it is going to fail, Charles. All right. And apart from these two new ones, we also had Edgar was doing a lot of remediation work for Spectre and Meltdown. He was trying to verify it through Power CLI. So he made a couple more modules basically just for that. So how do we use this, right? And here's a changelog. This is interesting if you've been using it for a while, but otherwise not very interesting if this is the first time you're using it. What you want to find out is exactly how it works. So here's the basic command switch options. And let me I have a little cat here that's hungry, and I'm just going to push him out and give him a kick. There we go. Now, I'm going to mute myself for just a second, guys, and see if his mom will feed him. 1 sec. All right. I am now unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
There was a lot of swearing in Spanish in this house just 10 seconds ago. All right, if you run the command without switches, it will output to PowerShell only, and it would include all data tabs. So what we want to do right now is grab one of those commands, and there's some way to show. Let me see. If I run just vDocumentation or get ESX info, I don't know if that's the right one. Hold on. Let me bring back to the list. No, get ESX inventory. I do that right. Well, probably the first thing we should do is connect to our vCenter. So I think my vCenter is 192.1.201. Oh, I did see the question about dynamic power management. It's not disconnected, but just powered off. Okay, we're gonna find out. So let's see. Just consider. Oh, there it is. Okay, administrator at vSphere.local, VMware one bang. I wonder if I can just copy those. So if you want to only see one tab, you can specify it. But things that we're typically going to do are tell it if you're only interested in an ESXi, in the cluster or a data center, where do we want it to be, where do we want the files to be put, and if we want to do CSV or Excel. This is taking a while. There we are. Sorry, I had pressed it. So let's try that again.
And just so you're aware, we've got about 10 minutes left in our scheduled time here.
Right. It most likely won't be. It'll go over that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I wonder what I was doing wrong, but there it is. Get ESX inventory. Oh, it's still failing. Okay. Bless you. Wonder why. Do I not have the documentation installed? I'm pretty sure I installed it. There it is. All right. Well, it might be that I just have to tell it get ESX inventory and then tell it give me a data center, for example. What I wanted to, oh, I remember. Now I remember. I am sorry. I'm trying to get to the get help for get ESX inventory. All right. I was just trying to type it and press enter and see if I got the help. So basically, this is what you get. Each one of the commands has its help in here. If you do more of these, for example, you can get examples, you can get a detailed. So each one of these commands will show you things. So what we want to do here is do a get ESX inventory data center and folder path. Let's say that we're going to put these in. Bless you. Let's say that we're going to put this in. In C, BBB, and let's also tell it that I want it as an Excel file. Mission and argument for private data center. Do I really have to tell you? So vPittsburgh. Now we just changed this behavior. It used to be you just had to get ESX inventory and it would immediately assume data center. But the last time that we did a release, we kind of broke it, and it's right here. We got a usability change that wasn't pregnant. Change logs, all commandless use parameters, and there is not a default one now. So you really need to specify host or cluster or data center. So as soon as, by the time that you see this video, there might be a new version. Basically, doesn't need a data center anymore. All right, but we're seeing here that I'm telling it, go find everything in data center vPittsburgh, save it into my vBrownbag folder that I put in my C drive, and it says, okay, I connected to vPittsburgh, and I'm getting now information from hosts. So the first one that I picked up was a Jakuftik, and we will see it go through each one of them to get information. Now, the file itself won't be there until it finishes. So don't be too worried if you don't find anything until the script finishes. And just for the sake of speed, I am going to open another web PowerShell. I am going to also bring it up here. And I am going to do a separate connection to my vCenter. And basically be able to run more commands at the same time. So we saw that it went to another host. I am almost sure that when it reaches the strum, we'll just get some errors, but we'll find out. Okay. Administrator at vSphere.local VMware. Well, let's see some other questions. Yeah, Valdez is having fun with my wife yelling back at me. My wife is amazing. I would never say anything bad about her. All right, so we're gonna grab another one of these commands. Let's try the ESXIO device. So get, and here I'm just completing with tab, and I'm going to copy the same thing, or maybe not. Maybe I'll, instead of doing the data center, maybe I can just do this cluster, right? Am I in the right one? Nope, I wasn't. Okay, here it is. So I copied this, but I'm going to do cluster. Gen Lux. All right, so we can see that it's So here's what I had talked about, Charles. No, this is a different error. So one thing that we're trying to do, specify the use basic parsing parameter and try again. So one thing that we're trying to do now is that we're trying to get the VMware HCL URL as part of the get ESXIO device command. So when we see a device, we will automatically give you the URL to find that in the VMware HCL site. Now, I don't know if this error was because strum1 is off, because I see that it is getting information for strum2, or if it's just a general error that it will not be able to do Internet Explorer, because the error I see right here. Okay. So yeah, we got a host here that says not responding, so it was not able to do that. So let's take a look at this file in the meantime. Let's see where it comes up first. All right. So yeah, if the host is off, then you will not get the information, even if it's DPM. And what we're seeing here is some controllers and an Ethernet connector. We're seeing the PCI address in the server itself, or the NUC in this case. But we're seeing this very important 4 identifiers. We have a firmware version for our VMNIC, and we have driver versions, which driver and which VIV. And this is what I was talking about, that once we get those 4 identifiers, we can go ahead and find this device on the VMware HCL, if it exists, of course. So you can see here that we populated these things. And in this case, it's a NUC, so it probably doesn't show any I/O devices. But let's go ahead and run that again and run it basically against the data center. So we also get some of those super micro ones. And those may actually show some more meaningful data than NUCs. So data center, the Pittsburgh. All right. This one did finish. All right, so we also got our inventory file here, and that one did see all of our data center. So we get to see some information, and sorry, this machine doesn't have an active office. So we can see the management IP. If these servers actually had CIM enabled, you can also get the DRAC or ILO on the servers. You can find the product version, builds, the makes, serial number if they had them, BIOS versions. In this case, you can actually tell that my BIOS versions for my NUCs are different. And CPU count, memory. In some servers, we can actually tell even how many memory slots are used and power supplies, how many NICs total. And this is probably one of the ones that I like the most, the host configuration. It tells me hyper-threading is enabled. It tells me the maximum EVC mode. It tells me if it was installed locally. In this case, we can see that everything was installed to USBs. It tells me the image, acceptance level, uptime, when was it installed, when was it last patched, my license. Jesus Christ. At least they're only going to be valid for like a month anymore. If it was joined to a cluster, if NTP is running, what the NTP server is, and the SSH settings, as well as any syslog servers. So there's a lot of information that you can tell about an environment just by looking at this second tab. You can tell that if a person is, if they're patching to the same levels. If you can look at the updates, you can look at the acceptance levels, you can look at the NTP and syslog settings. You can also tell, especially when you look at this 3, because one thing that I did not mention is that you can run these commands to several vCenters at the same time. So you can run this command. If you have 5 vCenters in your environment, you can get one Excel file that has information of the 5 vCenters. So that's pretty neat. All right, I'm going to close this one. That other one should still be running. And let's go ahead and try some other ones. What's it up there? Yeah. So let's take a look at the networking. That'll take a while. But basically, these are the things, all of that information that I just showed you in the inventory. It's not easy to see in any of the UIs that VMware offers us, whether it's the HTML5 or the Flex or the C# client. It's kind of difficult to get all of that information in that tabular form. So that's the main value, I think, of vDocumentation, being able to show you things in your environment and being able to quickly figure out if you have different settings in different places. All right, that will take a little while. What else can we take a look at? Let's go, keep going down here, and I'll show you some other things. So yeah, if you run it with show window, it's actually much more readable. I'll just do one real quick. Let's say I do this one maybe. So get help. You have that one, and you do show window. So you get it in this format, and you can even zoom in or zoom out. So Edgar has spent a lot of time trying to make sure that all of these things are filled out. So you have a question, normally if you look at the documentation, you can probably figure it out. Okay. Here's some example outputs from other people. This was in our 730. You can see that the memory slot counts did work there. Here's an example of a real NIC, of an actual server i350. And the one that we're running right now is the networking, so you'll be able to see the virtual switch configuration, whether it's a standard or a distributed switch, and also the VM kernel adapter and a physical adapter. One thing I don't have, but it's really cool, is that you can see the CDP information if you're connected to a Cisco device. So pretty cool to be able to get a listing, even though CDP information is sometimes not exactly reliable, but to be able to know which IP address or what switch it's connected to and which port it's connected to. Storage adapters and data stores. One of the things that I find most useful in this one is verifying the multipath policy. Multipathing policy is something that you still have to set up per host. So whenever you add a data store, you need to go and modify each host. So it helps you find out real quickly if there was anything wrong. And we used to have iSCSI in production. We also have information on the iSCSI configuration. So we can show you the vSwitch MTU and the port group names. And we can also tell you, which is very important for iSCSI, let's see where it is, if it's really doing port binding. So all the MTUs, all the information that you would normally have to click through several screens to see to make sure iSCSI is set up correctly, you can get it in one script. You can see that this one has VMK1, this one has VMK2. So
Graham asked if it does it show LLDP as well?
You know, we haven't had someone that tells us. Now, if there's a PowerShell command, if there's a PowerShell command for it, then we can do it. The only problem is I don't have anybody that has actually told me, hey, I ran this and this is what I found. So if you were to have, HP switches or some other vendor that has LLDP and you want to work with us, we can definitely make that happen. But so far, most people that I know are running Cisco, so that's what we put in there. Again, this is completely editable to whatever we need. Okay, so we got a couple here. I want to open up the networking first. Okay, and now we have, sorry about that again. Now we have a lot more information. We actually have some slot information from the shuttle. We see that there's some things that are connected and some things that are not. MTUs is being used by a switch right now. When you look at VM kernel adapters, we can tell that everything's in the default TCP/IP stack. Oh, look at that. We have quite different DNS settings in one of my servers over here. So I actually probably fix that. I actually have a standby adapter in one of my machines here. So you can take a look at that really quickly. And finally, what's the uplinks? What's the connected adapters? What's any port groups? And if you have had dealt with people changing the promiscuous mode and stuff, you know how difficult it can be to maintain all those things. So here's a place to see them all at the same time. So what you get here with these projects is a lot of information dumped into a place that is easily consumable. So this is just the I/O device once we ran it against the data center, and we can tell that we have way much more things now. I think that this one is an actual thing that will show up in the HCL, because that's a server board. So maybe we'll get some information about it here. But I just wanted to highlight that work in making sure that you can just click on this and go, oh, look at that. You can just go click on it and it should open what you're looking for. You know, maybe this one. Let's try this one, because that's a pretty popular controller. Yeah, there you go. So this is really an LSI card, and you can see that thanks to those identifiers that we're basically just creating this URL. Then you can go and click on it and start looking at the compatibility depending on the ESXi versions. So that was something that somebody suggested in GitHub, and Edgar was able to add it. And we're really happy when somebody suggests something, right? All right, I think you have an idea of how this is installed, how it's operated, where you can find information. I'm going to go back to our presentation just for a little bit. I only have some last slides there, and then we'll be done. Okay. So why is all this information important, right? It's really a lot of detailed, small settings, but the hypervisor is really the underlying base for a lot of the VMware cloud, right? So in the VMware ecosystem, you want to make sure that your HCL is, that you're complying with the HCL before you start talking about adding the vSIM components or NSX components or VRA or Horizon. With a good base in your base vSphere, you will have much less problems when you start using other more complex solutions. And when you invest this time in checking these settings, it will be returning stability. Another thing that I've discussed with people is that skills in documentation and scripting, they age very well. The technology may change in 5 years, but the habits of creating documentation or scripting documentation, those will probably remain the same. So that's something that we really like people to get more familiar with. Again, so vDocumentation makes operations easier. You can quickly assess the state of an environment with these Excel sheets. We talked about how you can get the CDP core information, so you don't need to go and find, hey, what switchboard is this connected to, right? If you need to confirm a host serial number, you can get it right there. Edgar was working on a module that basically tells you about the password histories. One thing that we experienced personally was that when we opened the ticket, they told us that we were running unsupported driver and firmware combinations. And this was just running off the Dell CD. And we didn't know that the vendor might not provide you exactly what the HCL says. So this is a good way to check real quickly if you're running the same driver and firmware for the same card across servers. So work smarter, not harder. So vDocumentation was created to help the community. It needs more eyes, coders, and users to improve. But we want to have that new hire that when he has the documentation and he was laughed at, that somebody just says, oh, we use the vDocumentation scripts, and the guy will say, oh, great, I can start with that. It might not be the best documentation out there, that we know that we are one of many, but it's definitely a start. So some extra links. This would be the HCL, where you can use those 4 PCI identifiers. And this is a blog post from Edgar on how he checks for Spectre and Meltdown using vDocumentation. It's a complex, it's if you take a look at it real quick, it's a very, very large blog post, and it's dense material. But if you want to really understand things, go ahead and take a read. Maybe you will not agree on how he does things. Edgar is his own person. I'm not vouching for him, but I really think that he's a really smart dude. So if you find something that he did wrong, have a discussion. That's why we have Twitter. All right. And finally, I will encourage everybody that it's here today to join VMware Code, mostly because we have, let me show you real quick. We have a vDocumentation channel, and it's really active. We have several people out there that are trying our thing. They'll let us know when we made something wrong. Let us know when maybe we can improve this. So a lot of the things that we saw today was because thanks to Michael White, that he's been trying vDocumentation for a while now. He let us know, hey, I found an error. So we'll fix them as time comes. But I think that's it. Let me basically close this out, and I will bring up the interface for questions and maybe talk to you a little bit before we sign off.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions on Twitter. We did get one more reply to the poll. I was around 960 days, if I recall correctly. So much for patching. Looks like all of our questions, or we don't have any new questions in the box either.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll take a look at Twitter in a little bit if anybody has any questions. I really appreciate everybody here being here today, especially because this was something that's basically my and Edgar's pet project. But I really appreciate you staying around and having this conversation with me. And take a look at the project. Again, it's just put vDocumentation in Google, and the first link will be our GitHub page or my GitHub page. We'll probably move it to its own project page, so it's not tied to me. And run them. Let us know what you think.
Excellent. We've just got a couple of compliments, but I think unless we have any more questions, I think we're good to call it a night here.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for hosting me, Paul, and thank you everyone that was here.
Excellent. Thank you for stepping up to present this week.